And so, welcome to our gathering in presence. This is very much an experiential thing, a real life experience of the presence. One could say we're creating a holy space in which you can go deep within and discover that still space within you. And what happens is the mind kind of starts to quiet down. Does anyone have a quiet mind? Raise your hand. It's very good. So when I say quiet mind, it's kind of like when the commentator, the inner commentator dies. Do you know what I'm talking about? The inner?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like there's something in there that's talking to you and say, no, you should worry about this, and you got to do this, and this is important to do. That's an inner commentator. When that dies, then the mind becomes still, and then you're in presence. So, but usually it takes a kind of slow process each day, gradually softening your mind, quieting your mind, and at some point it just sort of gone like that. Then the full glory of the presence arises. Then you become a saint. And you know why? Because a saint is a person who gives and doesn't need anything for him or herself. And the nature of the mind is desires. We have so many desires for life to go a certain way. So that's why our mind is chattering and moving about. So most people have very little presence actually, because the desires are going constantly. When the saint has a quiet mind, then everything that the saint does is simply for the benefit of everyone. They're no longer working for themselves. That's a saint. So, I have been a saint chaser for a long time. Since maybe it's been like 15 years or so, 15, 16 years, something like that. And you could say I'm kind of still like that. Because I had a realization that even if I got all my desires filled, because I was running a financial planning business, I had a house, I was married, I had a dog, I had what you might call the American dream. And people would look at me like that. And I was very happy and moving along and seemingly very successful. And then in 2008, I met my spiritual teacher. Maybe he's behind my head. My head is probably blocking. But I light a candle for him, particularly just to honor his inspiration and energy and presence. That's actually very important, that we do that for our teachers. We honor them. And so in 2008, I met him, and I was not sure what was going to happen, but it was in New York City in a little bookstore, and we were waiting, and then as he came into the room, I hadn't even seen him, and already tears were just streaming down my face. It was like my soul was moved. And that had never happened before. I was shocked. And then being with him in a retreat for, I think it was like a 3-day retreat. And the point of it was to be in the presence. That was the point of the retreat, that's it. It seems so simple. And so when you sit with a saint, your mind quiets down and you start to imbibe the transmission and qualities of that saint. I know that's very exciting. I love to do that. Because I had already achieved the American dream. I had completed kind of all the material tasks that I had come to on Earth. I mean, so there really wasn't much more to achieve to feel good. I didn't need to go on any more vacations or have any more fine foods or make any more lovely friends or whatever. I didn't really need the things of the world anymore, so I wanted to find out something beyond, and that's when I started to really look into saints, because they seemed to be happy, but they didn't need anything. A saint can sit in a cave for 14 years in meditation and not feel lonely at all, just feel the bliss of the divine in their heart just beaming. So after meeting him in 2008, I began to kind of receive guidance from him. And it's funny, because every time I met him, he just said, keep doing what you're doing. It's all good, just keep doing what you're doing. He didn't give me really anything specific. He gave me some specific mantras. Mantras are power words that invoke a kind of energy in your system. You can feel it. That's why we began with that. But so I was kind of getting a little bit impatient, like, well, when is he going to give me some sort of special task or something? And then in 2012, I had a meeting with him in Miami, Florida. It was a 3-minute meeting. And in that meeting, he said, Brian, it's time for you to renounce your old life and set out on the road and share these gatherings with people. And you call them, in the ancient Indian tradition, you call it satsang. Have you heard that term before? Satsang. Sat means truth, sang means gathering. So a gathering together in truth, where each person is a spiritual seeker striving to kind of like experience the presence. That's the purpose of each person who comes. So they want to find out the truth of their being, satsang. So he said to do that for 3 years, 2 years at first, but then it was 3 years. And he said you can just get a vehicle and travel about. So then I was living in Austin, Texas at the time, and I just had a little garage sale in my apartment, and then I gave all my business clothes away to the nearest charity, and then I sold my car. It was a Honda Civic, and then I got a van and put a bed in the van, and then set off into the sunset. And I lived out of that van at that time for 3 years, and traveled from city to city to city, holding gatherings, holding the space for a powerful presence. And it has been an astounding experience, because people come out and their eyes are just glowing and they're so happy and loving. Even the grumpiest come in with like somewhat of a little bit of a scowl on their face, and what am I doing here? You know, oftentimes like husbands would be dragged to their wife's spiritual gathering. What are we doing here? And then afterwards, say, oh, wow, that was great. I'm not sure what happened, but I feel good. So I did that, and I would always kind of call ahead, kind of like I did with you. I'd call ahead and say, would you like to hold a gathering? And I would say most people said no. So it just happens that way. Because it's kind of weird, you know. You're a wandering monk? Like, what do you do with that? It's kind of odd. They don't have that much in the United States. In India, that's way more common. Here, people don't really understand. So some would say yes, and then I would come and I would travel there and sit and hold the gathering, and people would enjoy it, and then I would move on. And I'm continuing to move it on and on and on. And that really is the purpose of my life, is to share the presence with as many people as I can. Reverend Carolyn was very open to the idea. What I feel is people who have experienced presence before will be more likely to host a gathering like this, because it's not just about a talk explaining spiritual principles. It's a feeling. And what I've noticed over the years, following Swami Purna particularly, that the presence within me has grown significantly, where I have become a different person, completely different person than the old Brian. You could say unrecognizable. And even within, even inside, if you were to explore the inside of Brian, the psyche, it's been shifted dramatically, the inner terrain. The more you sit in the presence in these types of gatherings, the more the energy builds inside you, and you start to carry it with you wherever you go. So if there's a fire or there's a virus, you're calm. Even if your house burns down, you're calm. And some people would say it's, in so many words, it's just the will of God. Now what next? Very calm. So people in general kind of like to be around you because you're so calm. Whereas a person who's not in presence would be someone who's worrying about life all the time, concerned about what's going to happen today or tomorrow or what just happened. So all of that goes away when you're in presence, and that, again, can be maintained constantly through one's life. Another way to describe it is that your soul becomes illuminated, and the natural sort of experience of the soul is presence, it's bliss, it's love, it's joy, and that dominates your experience. And then life does not bother you, no matter what the hardships. And in fact, if a hardship does come, you say, thank you, Lord. I appreciate this because it's, in a way, testing me to see where I'm at in my presence. Can I maintain the presence in that difficult situation? In other words, can I apply what I've learned at church into my daily life? And if I go off the handle and get upset and get depressed and sad and worried, then one could say that maybe I haven't imbibed fully that which the church is actually propounding. So I'm going to sing this Aramaic mantra for you. This is one where you probably won't be chanting with me. Just because it's a long one. But it's I feel very important right now to bring the energy specifically to the church in general. So we're going to have an intention that the energy of this prayer is sanctifies the whole building, the whole space, so that anyone who comes here may feel it. It's called the prayer of the Essenes, ancient prayer during the time of Christ. In Aramaic, because Christ spoke Aramaic, and it's a holy language in which mantra and prayers come from. So it's interesting, many Christian churches are not really using this, but it's the mystical tradition of Christ. So this prayer is an invocation of the 4 archangels, as well as Shekinah, who is the Divine Mother, and then Christ, who resides in your heart. So I'll sing this song, and then you can set your intention to feel the energy of it, kind of get the essence of it. Because it's not about understanding exactly what it means, because this is going to be in Aramaic. I'll probably translate it after I sing it. But it's more, do you feel what the prayer is saying? Many people understand prayers logically, but it does not mean that it's deeply touching them. Do you understand what I'm saying, like the difference? And a prayer can be very flat, where if you're not, in a way, kind of experiencing a beautiful meditation after saying a prayer, then what's the point? You've just in a way, parroted a prayer that doesn't have any effect on you. You want something that sweeps you away into the heavenly realms. Like, that's more real to me than the normal human state. We're talking about reaching into the divine realms. So this is calling forth the archangels. I'll sing it for you. In the Lord's name. On my right hand, Michael. On my left hand, Gabriel. Before me, Uriel. Behind me, Raphael. Above me, Shekinah. And in my heart, Yeshua. And you can even sing that one with me, that last part, in my heart, Yeshua. So Christ held satsangs. He just didn't call it satsang back then. Gatherings in presence. Where, for instance, the Sermon on the Mount wasn't just speaking like tenets of, what is blessed, but more expressing the teachings, but bringing the Christ energy into the group. So, you could be taking notes here, how do I become more spiritual? But then you're also missing the point, because we've all read many spiritual books. We all know how to be spiritual. We've all read many books. We know that already. But a person who's read many spiritual books could speak the words about the spiritual things that they've read in those books, but it doesn't mean that they're an embodiment of spirituality. So Christ was trying to bring the energy of spirit into the space. So the ultimate goal was to be as quiet and still as possible so you can imbibe the vibrations of Christ as you sat with him. And that is, or those are, the mystical teachings. And that's what I'm trying to, in a way, represent. You know, how can I represent that? Well, I work on myself every day, intensely, always watching the mind and seeing where reactions, and if there's any fear, okay, where does the fear come from? Breathe into it, relax into it, talk to the mind, and help it to get back into centered presence again. Every single day, all moments of the day, watching the mind and any emotions, and continuing to work that so that the being is, again, always in presence. So the spiritual teachings don't just end after like Sunday service. You have to be vigilant every single day if you really want to become Christ-like. It takes a lot of effort. I don't mean to discourage people. But I mean, since I got onto the spiritual journey, I have been looking at myself very hard. Like, it's been not easy exploring my deepest fears, my deepest hatreds, my deepest judgments, and really trying to work those out with a lot of healing work. So this is no joke. In a way, it's pretty serious business. You have to look at yourself. And as I said, the radical spiritual seeker is the one who thanks God for all the difficult situations. And says, because what the difficult situation does is it pulls out your negativity so you can see, oh, I didn't know that I still have that reaction, still have that issue, still have that problem. Now, how can I heal that? If I didn't have the difficult situation, how could I find out where inside me is still not aligned with the Christ? I have to go through difficult situations. If I surrounded myself with sweet, kind people all the time, who's going to push my buttons to see where I'm feeling still insecure? Where I still have judgments? That's why relationships are so helpful in the spiritual path, because they'll push your buttons so you can work on yourself, because it's never the other person's fault. You reacted. They are meant to be in your life to bring that reaction out so you can grow. You made an agreement with them before you were even born. Soul said, okay, yeah, let's plan this. You act like that just so that I can see where my insecurity is, so that I can work that out, so I can feel more confident about myself. But if you've forgotten that you made that agreement, then suddenly you think that person's your enemy, when actually they're your friend and you agreed with them in the first place. You see? Each person who makes you react, they agreed with you before you came into the life to help you out. It may seem like they're an enemy, when in fact they are your ally. They are helping you more than the people who are so-called sucking up to you, flattering you. Those people are not helping you. Or pretending, to be nice. But many people, we pretend to be nice, but when our mind, we're thinking, God, that person sure needs a lot of work on their spiritual growth. Yeah. But the teaching with the Christ, with the woman who comes, they drag the woman who's the adulteress, pushes her on the ground and says to Christ, what she was caught in the act. Now the law says that she should be stoned. What say thou? And they ask Christ, and Christ simply leans down in front of the woman who's like weeping and totally humiliated, right, in front of everyone. And all he does is draw the fish. Peace. Let that person who has not committed a sin cast the first stone. Of course, everyone walks away because everyone has done the same things that woman has done. So our judgments, we're judging others, and we've done everything that they've done. So until we take the mote out of our eye first, we have no right to judge others because they're a reflection of what we do. So you can say, oh, that person does that. I actually don't want to be like that. So how am I acting like that in my life, rather than spending so much time criticizing the other person? So I'm explaining this because this is the foundation of creating presence. If you don't do this on a daily basis, it's going to be very difficult to meditate and to go into the blissful spiritual realms, let alone divine realms, which is a whole other stage. That's a rare person who has reached divinity. Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Ram, those great beings. So let's do, you could say, a kind of exercise in presence. And this is very easy. Presence is kind of like, and I want to kind of explain this before we do it, because how do we know whether we're in presence or not? Like, are we there yet? So, presence can be defined many ways, like, oh, I'm present, so I'm with you. I'm looking into your eyes and I'm listening to you and I'm acknowledging you. You could say that's presence, but that's not my definition of presence. It's way more than that. It's more about feeling the inner radiance of my being. That would be what I would consider more presence, which is a much more profound state than just listening to a person and being with them. That's sort of like the beginning. So how do you create this experience of radiance right here and now? And that's why the meditation is so important. You can try to meditate and close your eyes and try to still your mind, but I would say that probably most people will be frustrated by that and then give up. Give up. I mean, it happens all the time. I see it all the time, so it's not singling out, but that happens. I can't meditate. I just sat down for 2 minutes and tried to still my mind, and my mind wouldn't become quiet. So you need a tool to, in a sense, draw you into the presence. You need to expose yourself to an energy instead of just sitting down and saying, okay, time to be quiet mind, I'm ready. Ready, go for it. Quiet. Does the mind obey? It does not. It will do what it will do. So, let's do a meditation on Christ in the heart. And then I'm going to begin with a very specific mantra that was done during the time of Christ. And maybe you've heard this one before. So there's a mantra that they used, that tradition, the Essene tradition, which is what he was a part of. You could call it a kind of mystery school that he was born into. It's interesting. And they chanted the Aramaic words, Inanna Rachma. So Inanna means I am. Rachma means love or unconditional love or compassion. It's a kind of a general energy of love. So what you do is you just place your right hand over your heart like this. And you're focusing there. And when you breathe in, you breathe into your heart like this. And then say, Inanna Rachma, and your breath goes out. So you're breathing in the light into your heart. Inanna Rachma. Breathing out all the air. And then again, a deep breath. Inanna Rachma. Inanna Rachma. Inanna Rachma. Inanna Rachma. Again, deep breath in. Inanna Rachma. Breathing in the light into your heart. Inanna Rachma. Inanna Rachma. Inanna Rachma. Inanna Rachma. We'll do it 5 more times. Inanna Rachma. Inanna Rachma. Inanna Rachma. Inanna Rachma. Deep breath. Inanna Rachma. You can relax your hands. And then try to notice the shift. It can feel like a buoyant experience, an inner buoyancy. And it pushes up into a meditative state naturally. So just try to feel it. Just to kind of confirm, the energy of presence, when you get the shift, you put all of your attention there. This is the key to taking advantage of the energy so that it can raise you into the sort of higher dimensions. Once you touch onto it with your mind focuses on it, it draws you in even more. And the more you can focus on it, the bigger it becomes. And then it can draw you in so much that it's almost like you just get completely absorbed into the energy. And your meditation is so powerful that you won't even hear the words that I'm saying. Presence oftentimes comes from the heart center, the very center. There's an energy center there. And so it's oftentimes depicted, that energy center, as a pink lotus flower. So try to visualize a pink, you don't need to know what a lotus flower really works. It's just a pink flower. Imagine it's the lotus, the petals opening in your heart. And Christ himself is sitting on that lotus flower in your heart. Try to visualize that as clearly as you can. And then imagine that image of Christ in the flower is moving up, straight up your spine, into your throat, which is an energy center in the throat. Imagine now he's sitting there in the flower, and he's glowing. And then you visualize him floating upwards in the flower until he's sitting at the energy center between your eyebrows in meditation there. And he's glowing. And then imagine he's now floating up in the flower even higher, and now sitting on top of your head at the crown, that energy center there. And then imagine that he sitting on top of your head now just turns into pure light. You could call it divine light. And it just flows all over and through your body, all through your aura and your body, surrounding you in that light. Just imagine your aura becoming more and more radiant, so full of this beautiful divine light. And then imagine that that light spreads, expands throughout the room. Till the whole room is glowing, filled with the presence of this light. And each person in this room is blessed by the light. So we sit in this light and allow ourselves to be healed. Or our mind to be purified. Our bodies to be healed. Our emotions uplifted. And we pray that this light, this presence, stay here, so that any person who comes into this room may also be blessed. And so it is. And so it will be. Amen. It's crucial that you create a sacred space, particularly in the place that you do your spiritual practice. This is a way to do it. So I gave this so that you could do it at your home. What happens at home a lot of times is we accumulate a lot of negative emotions in the house, and when we go home, it's triggered again. So let's say a depressed person wonders, well, why can't I break out of my depression? Because they haven't cleared their home. They haven't worked on purifying the space like we just did with this space. So you can do this. And if there's a place that you generally meditate in your home or do prayer, then this practice that we just did would be the place to do it. My suggestion is to make that space only for prayer. If your house is big enough, you've got a room. Only for prayer, only for spiritual practice. Because if people are coming in and, doing other things, studying schoolwork or this or that, you get a lot of worldly energy accumulating into that room, and then it's much harder to meditate. And it's almost like you kind of taint the energy of the room by doing other things in that space. So making, in a sense, your altar room, where that's where you meditate. No one else is allowed to go in. It's kind of like that, if you can. And then that could take your meditation practice to a whole new level. Because then when you walk into the room, the energy of it is already sending you. You also can use a cushion or a chair that you only use for your meditation, that no one else, like you don't eat on it or whatever it is. So that way that when you sit on the cushion is programmed with the energy of meditation, so that it'll also send you into a meditative state. So the key, you see my point, creating an environment, almost like a cocoon, a bubble. Cocoon is a really good word. If you don't have your cocoon, it's tough to really go into deeper states of meditation. So environment is crucial. And I suspect you do a lot of your gatherings here in this room. Yeah. So even if no one else is doing it, let's say you come in like on a Sunday or something for a Sunday service, you can yourself imagine, first the light of Christ in your heart, and then expanding into the whole room and just filling the air. So you keep it going. You want to keep activating the energy, because the more you do it, the more holy the space becomes. That's why, I've traveled to India quite a few times, and there are some temples there where people are very serious about keeping the energy high. And when you go into that place, you feel it. The presence is very powerful, and it just sends you. It's very easy to just sit and go into meditation, almost kind of effortlessly, because the priest there created it. It's not super common that you find it in India. You have to find really genuine spiritual seekers. I would say probably the majority of the priests in India do it because it's a ceremony. They do it by rote because that's what their family has already done, and that's what they do for a living. But as far as being a genuine spiritual being, it's not common. So before I move on, does anyone have any questions about that process, or any thoughts about the suggestions that I've given so far?
I would like you to repeat the original chant that lifted us, the simple one.
The Inanno, is it?
In and out, it went with me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, because it's a focusing on the presence of the heart, so it's Inanna Rakma. Rakma, Rakhma, I think is that how it's spelled, Rakma. It's an Aramaic mantra. So, as I said, it's kind of funny that it's such a profound mantra that was used during the time of Christ, and yet I don't hear it done in any churches. It seems kind of strange to me. Because that's like that should be the basis of Christianity, you know. And it's again, I've said this before. It's the mystical foundation of Christianity. So, and that's what I follow. I look at the original Christ, the Christ, and I literally tune into his vibration and absorb that energy, and then I share that with others as well to help them experience and have a real life sense of what Christ is, because each person has Christ in them. Christ is not a body. Body is made of 5 elements. It comes and it goes. You know, there's a big deal that, you know, this. And I don't mean to be offensive about this, but there's such a big deal on the figure of Christ on the cross. So much can be focused on that and lose sight of the real energy and power of Christ, which you can actually tune into. So if you've got a let's say a church in which the minister has never really connected to the true presence of Christ, but they know a lot about the life of Christ and are quoting the Bible, then yes, you might be inspired by the words, but where is the real Christ, right? Where is that? And the invocation of the energy is the mystical tradition, and that is what Christ encouraged. It was not to create a church based upon his name. He wasn't interested in that. He wanted the mystical teachings to come alive in his disciples and then be passed on. That's called a lineage. You've heard that idea, right? A lineage is where the master, the spiritual master, passes on the spark of spirit, you know, that holy presence, to their student. Their student simply imbibes it through just being with them. Then the student goes and shares it with his students or her students. And then that student passes it on, and so on. See what I mean? And then so it's a disciple, it's like a master lineage. So the one master creates another master, and then another master. But the funny thing is like some traditions, the master lineage disappears, and they lose the ancient teachings because people focus so much on the church, so much on the rules, right? It's like, this is not about rules. What are you feeling? Are you feeling like radiantly happy right now? And does that maintain throughout your life? What is your experience? So he had said to the woman at the well, you should have asked me who I am, and I could give you the living water. That's what living water is. You drink of the living water, you imbibe of his presence, and you become like that. And when you say save your soul, you know, you get your soul saved. Like, what does that mean? That's why they call him a savior. Because primarily, 99.999% of humans, their soul has been suppressed by fears, hatreds, judgments, angers, worries, concerns about daily life. Soul gets suppressed, so no one feels the radiant, constant joy of the soul. That's lost. So we're really trying to revive that, to, give the living water and to drink of that like he suggested. And then saving the soul means now the soul arises and it never goes back to sleep. You've heard of the term awakening, spiritual awakening. That's what it is, awakening of the soul consciousness that's been asleep for practically eternity. Millions of lifetimes, the soul has been asleep. And so then, that was my feeling when I got onto the spiritual path. I said, oh, this is my chance in this lifetime to really awaken this, because my soul has been asleep for thousands, if not millions of lifetimes. This is a huge chance. I'm putting all my eggs into this basket because, as I said at the beginning, I had already achieved all the worldly things. Now it's time for spiritual things. I live a very simple life. I don't own anything. Everything fits in my car. I'm not interested in achieving any more worldly things. I've done it. And that did not give me happiness. Maybe comfort it gave me, but not eternal happiness. Now, things have changed drastically. So, what I'm trying to do is see about making sure people's priorities are right. Not to say you have to have the same priorities that I have, let go of everything, but the things that you do have, dedicate them to the service of the Christ. So if you have a house, then use that house for spiritual purposes, to serve people, to help people. If you have food, give to people, to help people. One of the reasons why I fast once a week for 24 hours, then I can take that whatever resources that I had saved and give it to someone. Right? So much energy gets focused on Brian, the selfish person who wants things for himself. Now it's about giving it all away. Brian doesn't need anything anymore. Give as much as I can before the body dies. It's a great opportunity. So yes, Inanna Rachma. A beautiful practice. Do you know the name for God in the Essene tradition or the mystical tradition of Christ? Allah. Allah. So, one way you can invoke the presence of God is by singing Allah, chanting Allah. And I want to just add one more thing, which is perhaps important to know and may not make a lot of sense to you, but you see how I'm talking about the master-disciple relationship and how the master is passing down the energy to the disciple, which is really important. It happens in many traditions, not just the Christ tradition, Buddhist tradition, Islamic tradition, Sufi tradition. So you could say my tradition is Swami Purna, but the funny thing is that Swami Purna helps me with all of the traditions. I was talking to you about that before. So I'm not fixed in any particular religion, or just know that I'm not Christian, I'm not Hindu, I'm not Buddhist, I don't have any particular religion. But I'm interested in the core of the teachings, which is the common denominator, it's just the energy and the presence. But Swami Purna, I will say to him, you know what, I'd really like to deeply connect with the essence of Christ. So can you help me with that? And he says, okay, yes, let's initiate you into the Christ path. And one of the mantras that he's helped me to connect to is Allah, the name of God, in that Essene tradition. you could call it the ancient Jewish tradition, but it's kind of like, Jewish went into Christianity. It's like Christianity in a way is a sort of offshoot of Judaism anyway. I would say that in a sense Jesus was a rebel. He says, enough of the rules. Let's just get back to the basic principles of be good. So this is a mantra that you can sing with Aloha. I like to sing it rather than just chant it straight. You can chant with me. And as you're chanting it, you feel it in the room. You'll know what I mean. You'll feel it. You can chant with me. Again, let's take in 3 deep breaths and breathe in the presence of that mantra. Just notice your inner experience. Feeling the energy. like to say that the true spiritual teachings are invisible. So much better that way, because it can get so complicated with the rules that I'd just like to share the essence instead. So then I wanted to say, did you have any other questions? No, you had that. Any other comments or even your experience of any of the mantras and what you like? Always good to get feedback too. Mm-hmm.
This last one, the Alaha. The Allah.
Oh yes, Allaha, yeah.
I could do that.
You could do that one. Yeah. And oh, by the way, just to add on, she's got the mala, so there's 108 beads. One of my practices is this: Allaha, 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 Allaha. And I do 108 repetitions of that, and it invokes the God within. It's very easy to do, and I like it. It's very meditative, actually. And one of the reasons why I like the mantra is because it gives my mind something to focus on. A lot of times, if just sitting in silence, the mind goes to Timbuktu. And then suddenly you're like, what was I just doing? So the mantra really helps to focus on something that's godly.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
No, for sure.
Yeah.
I do the Maha mantra, when times when my mind is just garbled, and just try to say that over and over, and that really helps me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this would be a good one for a person who's more kind of oriented towards Christian and connecting with Christ. Allaha, 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 Allaha. And just keep going. And to me, it's so much fun to do that. So I have a different fun. Sometimes I have trouble having conversations with some people because we have different versions of fun. Oh, I'm chanting this great mantra. Do you want to hear about it? Mantra. Can we just go to the pub and have a beer and pizza? Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm vegetarian and I really eat only clean organic foods. So, and actually I prefer to make my own food because it has my energy in it. If I go to a restaurant, I'll have a blessing for the food, but in general I make my own. That's why I recommend people cook their own food if they can to keep their own energy. So, yes, you had a thought or a question.
I just have a question of what are your thoughts on virtual energy, joining a satsang virtually over the internet, or prayer groups over the internet, or over the phone?
Yes. So yeah, a big proponent of that. Yes, this is why the majority of my gatherings are streamed live on YouTube, 3 days a week usually, because the energy comes through crystal clear. For me, quite powerfully. It depends on how attuned you are. If you're really open, you can really feel it. If you're not so open, you may not feel it as much. It depends on the person. Some people don't like to sit in front of a computer, but yeah, or a prayer session or whatever, yeah, the energy comes through. So that's why I do it consistently. And of course you had to do it during COVID because no one wanted to come to a gathering. Here at least people want to come. So yeah.
What I've noticed here today for myself is, I've done prayer for several years now, but all of a sudden, through health things and stuff that's going on in my home, the negative stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it's been really hard. I don't have a space anymore.
Mm.
I have shared my house with others.
Mm.
So now my house is full and my prayer place is gone.
Yes.
But today, it's like I am almost going off the chair.
Yeah.
I'm just really surprised
Beautiful.
at how deep I'm going right now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you very much for being
Yeah,
here.
yeah, and that will, 1 second. And one added thing to her is your house is full. Come here, because this room,
Yeah.
and do the practice, if you can, do the practice I suggested, because now you're serving other people too.
Right.
Now that you're not just doing the meditation for yourself,
Yeah.
now you're creating a holy space here where everyone can benefit. But if you can't do it anywhere, then you just do it in your car or in somewhere in
Yeah.
nature.
Good idea.
Yeah, so wherever you can, it's important to be alone. Be alone with yourself. Christ would go out into the desert for 40 days, and he would sit in a cave and just eat just very minimal. And
That sounds good.
and I'll tell you the reason why he did that, because when he came back to help people and heal, his healing was much more crystal clear, and a lot more miracles would happen around him because of that. So you'll notice before he resurrected Lazarus, he delayed
Mhm.
because he was fasting,
Yeah.
right? Because it clears out your impurities. And then he would go and he visited Lazarus. Of course, Lazarus was already in the tomb.
Right.
But he said, Lazarus, come forth, and of course he did. But that he had to prepare himself energetically to do that, so fasting is really helpful. So, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I was curious why you chose the harmonica as your musical accompaniment.
Yeah. A harmonium, harmony. I want to create harmony in people's beings. I want people to feel harmonious. Like I said, whether you have a fire or you have a virus, you feel still at peace and harmony. The whole world could be panicking, and you just feel so content inside. Then you can actually help people. It doesn't help you to become worried about these things. You can't help people in that state. Your consciousness is too scattered and bothered. You can't heal people. If Christ was going around worried that he was going to be killed, I think, because he knew he was going to be crucified the whole time. If he had been walking around worried about that the entire time, do you think he would have been able to heal anyone? If you're worried about all the things going around you in society, if you're turning on the news and doing all that stuff, you're not going to be a healer. You're going to be trapped in your concerns and your worries about life. You can't heal others when you haven't healed yourself. So I say sometimes it's helpful, remove yourself from all the worries of other people and other programs, and just sit alone and just do the breathing and then do the chant. And you keep doing that, sooner or later you'll be strong enough. Then you'll be able to be around people who are generally worried and they won't rub off on you. But a lot of times, if you have friends who are conversing with you about worried things, they'll rub off on you. So also, again, be careful of who your friends are, because they will influence your consciousness and affect your meditations. I mean, I myself, I don't have a lot of friends. And it's not because it's, I'm like, get away from me or something. Probably the first thing is how many people really can relate to my life, being a kind of renunciate, where my focus is God. This is it. I'm not interested in anything else. So it's like, can you find people who are of like mind, who are willing to come here and say, hey, let's get together. We want to be here and establish presence and connect to the energy. Like that would be a date for me, Girl comes along and says, would you like to go on a presence date with me? And we can have a good time. Would you like to chant with me? Oh, you have a mala? Great. We're going to be good friends. This is a mala, by the way, a rosary and mala, it's the same thing. So find like-minded people, because they say where two or more are gathered here in my name, that I will be there, which is so true. the more people come together and really focused on the presence, it creates a bigger impact. Your prayer is much more powerful in a group of people than just doing it alone as well. So that's why I love, having the church. And everyone says, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to keep cultivating this energy, until death. See, you know how your next lifetime is determined? Your consciousness when you die. What is your consciousness? If your consciousness is worried, you get incarnated into another worried family. And people are,
Not next time.
it just keeps revolving over and over and over again with the same people who are bothered. When you really work on yourself, and at the end, the last word you're speaking is Allah. Guess where you go? Your next family will be very spiritual, oriented towards spirituality, and you will be encouraged to find your soul in that family. So what a great boon to be born into a spiritual family. It makes a really big difference. Why? Because you qualified for it. You worked in your past lifetime really hard to get to this point where you wouldn't forget in the next lifetime, because most people forget. And then they have to kind of remember, oh, I'm here to find my soul. I'm not here to achieve a bunch of material things and make myself famous and rich. That's not why we come here. We come here to evolve in consciousness. If riches come, fine. Give it away. Give it to the poor. Give it to charities. Give it to the needy. Give it to build beautiful temples and shrines to help people remember God. We need that more than we need successful corporations. The United States now is kind of built on that, is so-called successful corporations. We have that already. We need genuinely spiritual people who are holding up a torch and saying, look at the light. So I don't know if someone had another comment or question.
Well, I was just going to say how I appreciate your very simple words about to notice the physical reactions that we have when we're, like for myself, my shoulders inside lifted when you were speaking about, hang on to that. During the first chant, I had some very specific internal reactions, and I'm going to remember about that, going forward, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So she's talking about actually recognizing the presence.
Yes.
This is a key thing. I think you were walking around in your daily life and completely ignoring the presence. But when you tune in, you can feel it's a buoyancy, it's a rising. It's almost like I'm being pushed up into another dimension. And then, so I'll give you another symptom of presence, is your vision starts to diffuse. So the boundary between the chair and the air and the floor starts to kind of meld. So you don't feel so much of the separation between the chair and the floor and the air, because your eyes start to see things more as a one, as opposed to separate things. The way ego works is me and you. That's what ego is. It's me. I'm the center of the world. But when you start to diffuse, you start to feel yourself dissolve into the environment. That's a symptom of presence. And people will feel that. They'll go into states like that when they're around you, because you're emanating an energy of presence. Then they'll want to be around you and sit, because there's something about you. There's like this it factor. God, feels so just wide, peaceful around her. What is she doing? Is it her perfume? Or whatever. It's like that. So, and then you will benefit others through your own spiritual work that you're doing. Don't think this is a selfish process. You're doing it also for others so that they can tune into your presence when you're around them. Yeah, you had a...
So you're saying we have to back and do this again?
Over and over and over,
It never
continuing
ends?
every single day. It never ends until you are completely dissolved into presence. Here's, what a great question. That's like the best question of the whole day,
Like many.
right? So it's important to understand that our ultimate destination is God. I'm not saying that, you're not already there, because everything is God. Everyone says that, God is infinite, God is omnipresent, God is omniscient. We've all heard that. We're saying that, but we don't experience ourselves as everywhere. We experience ourselves in a body and a mind, running around doing things on a planet. But the God-conscious beings literally feel themselves, and I'm saying literally, I'm not saying like imagining, as if their real experience is, I am, or I am everywhere. And so when you're in front of a being like that, they are you. They don't see you as you. In a way, you are part of their cosmic body. You can reach that state of what you call God consciousness. Absolutely. But what it requires is exactly what you're saying. Every day, continuing to look towards God and attune with the tools. That's why I'm trying to share some tools, at least, so people, if they feel inspired, they can use it for themselves as a tool. It's like something tangible. You got it in your hand. You can use it. Not just a philosophy. It's like something you do that results in an expanded state of presence that if you do every day, you'll continue to progress deeper and deeper and deeper until at some point you're dissolved. And then at that time, the whole thing about birth and death ends. You're done with the game. Because birth and death happens to the person who believes in separation of I am a human. It's human consciousness. That's what gets us caught in it. So we're breaking out of it and it's a worthwhile task, because I don't know if you've noticed the amount of suffering you've experienced just in this one lifetime. This is tough. Living this life, it's very difficult. But there's a chasm of a difference between the person who's in human consciousness versus in divine consciousness. The divine conscious being is always in bliss, no matter what the circumstance is. Radiantly happy, never ending. That's why they can serve. Otherwise, the individual person is stuck trying to get their needs met and get their desires met. So they can't help. That's why I tried to define what the saint was. A person who doesn't need something for themselves, who gives it all away, because they don't have any problems of their own anymore. It doesn't occur to them. They don't have any worries or concerns. They have gone beyond fear. So maybe that helps to kind of answer your question. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is your last time around?
I won't answer that question, but just to say that I am dedicated to finding the truth. And my life is that direction. It is what my life is about. And if I could just encourage a few people along the way, I feel so fulfilled, because this is the most wonderful thing. If you look at the pre-Brian, was it pre-Brian, post-Brian? I don't know if that makes any sense. But before I got into spiritual things, and then after, and then how the development went, is such a beautiful, sweet difference. I can't believe it. So I feel compelled. I feel compelled to share the practices and the inspiration with others so that they could do the same thing, because it's imagine that the love is so deep that you're weeping. And it's a love not because you love your dog, because he licks you when you get home or something, but it's a general love for everyone and everything. So everything kind of moves you as a manifestation of God. So there's that heart is so sweet and tender and loving. Like when that's turned on, your life is magic. And like, wouldn't it be great to live around a lot of people who was just that they felt the magic everywhere they went? It would be a fun life. But the way our consciousness is, at least on this earth right now, there's just a lot of fears and worries. So this world needs this kind of gathering more than ever. So people are saying, oh, I want to stay away from a gathering like this because of worries about getting the virus and so on and so forth. I would beg to differ. I'd beg to differ. I'd say, come here, work on your fears and worries and concerns. Start melting that away. Start releasing that. Be in these gatherings as much as possible, because that will heal you. Not hiding in your house away from a virus. It doesn't work that way. You don't evolve that way. You just confirm your individuality and you confirm your separation from God. If you keep repeating to yourself, I'm scared of the world, then that's what you become. Notice, like, I don't quite experience the same fear as others do. I just don't. Because there's a deep trust that I'm guided. And even if the body would get the virus, it's okay. Even if it dies, it's okay, because this body is not me anyway. It's an eternal soul that goes on forever and ever and ever. So there's a lot of fear around getting sick and dying. You have to get over those things. You must, if you are going to liberate yourself. If you're going to connect with your soul, you must go beyond sickness and death. If not, you will be trapped in body consciousness and continue on and on and on. And your soul is yearning to break out of the shell. It doesn't want to be trapped in that consciousness anymore. And the funny thing is once you start developing the presence and the energy, you become quite immune to things that people would normally fall sick to. You don't get it. And not only that, you might start walking around and people will heal spontaneous around you anyway because of your energy building that. So there is a power in doing that. I mean, there's a lot we'll call it side benefits. Side benefits to doing the spiritual path, because you get great health, great mental focus, where you can do tasks really sharply, crisply, powerfully, because you don't have a bunch of thoughts pulling you in different directions, so you can get that thing, get her done. They say in the South, get her done. You can get it done because your whole mind can focus on completing a task. Because you're in presence. You can concentrate way better than normal humans. So a lot of side benefits to doing this, not just, I'm going to go into woo land, and disappear or something. It was very, very practical. You do your task way better. You get along way better with people because you're happy. They want to be around you. They want to be around a happy person. You make friends easier. And not to say that, I make friends, but I move on also. That's the thing, since I'm a wanderer. But, it's easy. Easy friendliness going. And all along trusting that the divine is just guiding you where you need to go. You don't need to debate, should I go to the Unity Church to hold this gathering? Of course. There's no debate about that. It's just a knowing. So that was a long answer to your question.
But it's about practice is what I'm
Right.
hearing him say, this harmonium is a tool
Yes.
for you, that the beads are a tool
Yeah.
for you.
That's why I recorded the CDs. I have the 2 CDs back there. One is a meditation CD, one is a mantra CD with the harmonium. And then the reason why I bring it is so that if a person says, oh, I like this kind of practice, they can take it and meditate on those things. and continue on with the practice. So that can be helpful too. So, any other questions?
Did you have a hard time, or how long did it take you to let go of, like, your marriage and worldly things? I
Mm.
mean, was that a struggle for you at all?
One reason why I was divorced was because my spiritual path was so intense and she really wasn't on the same path. I changed so radically that the partnership with that particular person just wasn't going to work out. I mean, I really tried too, really tried. So make sure you get married to someone who's, you know, kind of on the similar path that you are, and it'll be more harmony. But again, I changed so much. So that was a pretty obvious step for me, to do that, to let go of my things. She took pretty much all of
She's
that.
happy. Yeah, she's happy.
So she's happy, and I was actually really happy because all I had was my car full of stuff. Because I'm naturally kind of a natural renunciate. Easy for me to let go. I can throw things away and let them go. Because, you know, objects, I'm not real attached to a bunch of objects. I can live a simple life. So I already kind of had a natural tendency towards that anyway. But even if you don't have that, you can start to throw away things that you don't need, that you've accumulated in your house. That's actually a really good purging process. Because the things that you have attached to your consciousness in the background, because, you know, you have to be careful about becoming rich. Because once you become rich and you have all these possessions, you can think, oh, but I have to protect that and make sure that I save that. And so there's all these extra things in the back of your subconscious that you're concerned about when you become rich. I'm not saying don't become rich, but there was a reason why Christ said it's easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven, because the rich man's so concerned with his objects. So just practicing little bit by little bit, for me it was pretty easy.
Did you have parents?
Yes, they live in LA.
And are they healthy?
They are really good health too. Yeah.
Because that would be a worry for me. You know, my mother
Mhm.
is a worry for me.
Yes. Well, that's more of a kind of one-on-one conversation in terms of how to work with that. But I don't say abandon your parents. Say if you have a duty to serve your parents, then that's your path. Because one of the paths to God is kind of selfless service, where I'm not getting anything out of this. I'm just helping them for not even for their benefit, but in honor of the divine within them. You serve someone not for their sake, but for their soul's sake. See, there's a big difference. If I keep thinking you're a person and I'm serving you, I'm never going to merge with you. Never going to feel the divine, because I always think of separation. But if you consider more like, oh, but they're a soul and this is a soul, so the soul is the same because it's just presence, then okay, I'm serving in honor of the presence or the soul within you. And then you make it more of a spiritual practice rather than, well, I have to do it because, you know, I'm required and so forth. You change your perspective around it, your context. So I'm actually going to conclude with one mantra that I'd like to chant with you. And this mantra is Hari Om. And Hari Om, some people know the word Om, of course. It's the sound of the cosmos that a yogi hears, or a great saint hears in his meditation, the sound of the cosmos, the Om. So Hari Om means hurry home. Hurry home. So we'll chant this one together. Return to your own soul. Hurry home. Hurry Om, hurry Om, hurry, hurry Om, hurry Om, hurry Om, hurry, hurry Om. And then it repeats. return to your soul. It is time to be reborn. Let go of the old and arise, awake. Realize your true self. You are pure. You are infinite. You are ever blissful and happy. And then just allow these final mantras to wash over you. These are the final prayers. In honor of the true saint, the true Guru. So we place our hands in prayer position in front of our heart. And we'll chant together the mantra Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, sending a wave of peace to all beings in this world. Peace.